Good morning, everyone. After yesterday's question and answer session, I'm thrilled to be here again this morning. A lot of people came yesterday afternoon to me, or last evening to me, and asked me, what was the joke? They couldn't understand the last part. So I said, I will not repeat the joke today. But a few days ago, one of my friends came to me, and he came with, and he said, he looked very puzzled. So I asked him, what is your issue? And he said, can you please solve this puzzle of this missing $1? So he said, three of his friends went to have pizza. The cost of, when the waitress came to take the orders, the waitress said the pizza would cost $30, so each one of them gave $10 each. So they paid the $10. The manager said the pizza doesn't cost $30 but costs $25, so gave the $5 to give it back to the three gentlemen. So the waitress was not sure how to distribute the $5 amongst the three. So what she did was she gave $1, one sangamoli each to the three gentlemen and kept the $2. So my friend said that, he was very puzzled when he came to know about the discount. He only got $1. He said, we gave $10, we got $1 back. 9 times 3 is 27. $2 was kept by the waitress. So it's 29. Where did the $1 go? So I said, I'm going to the AG's conference. And I'm sure the lawyers are very smart people. So I'll get the answers from them. So I have a gift for you. If any of you know what the answer is, here's the $7 that has been signed by the former governor, the coach of Fiji team, as well as the captain. So if you know the answer, please come to me and I'll give you this thing. I was told that the $1 is not the environment levy, not the levy for the plastic bag also. One other thing from yesterday's presentation, I think I need to make it very clear right in the beginning, is I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to be one. And my presentation today will not talk about all the legal jargons as well as the various sections of the legislation, but I'll just give you a brief overview of the legislation. Why is it important? The role that the Reserve Bank has played in, the features of the registry, and some experience from other jurisdictions, as well as the next step forward. So very quickly, what is Personal Property Securities Act? The Personal Property Securities Act is a legal and institutional framework to facilitate the use of movable property or personal property as collateral for both business and consumer credit. So therefore, the loans are backed by collateral that are backed by collateral are called secure transactions. And the two important features of this is the property has economic value, and the property the lender can borrow if it does. The lender can take over the thing if the loan is not repaid. What types of assets can be collateralized? In theory, I must say that motor vehicles can be collateralized, livestock, crops. This is currently being done by FDB in terms of crop lien. Other tangible properties like machinery, jewelry, so you don't have to go to the pawn shop again. Bank accounts, intellectual property, and inventories. Is the personal properties security is something new for Fiji? Is it new overall? The ADB assisted the Reserve Bank in drafting this legislation. And one of the first lessons that I learned, because we are part of the committee, is that this legislation is actually a very old legislation. It has been in place in US in 1950s and 60s in a lot of states, then Canada, and then it moved off when the electronic transactions took place. Over the last 10 years, there's more than 50 countries that has adopted this Personal Property Securities Act. In the region, New Zealand was the first in 1999. Then the Marshall Islands enacted this in 2007. Solomon Islands in 2008. Vanuatu also in 2008. Federal State of Micronesia in 2006. Australia in 2009. Tonga, PNG, Palau, and Samoa followed. And Fiji is the last of the region which came into effect just this year. Just briefly, some background in terms of this legislation. So in 2014, the Ministry of Economy requested for a technical assistance from the ADB PSDI they responded positively, and the Minister for Economy then approved a task force that the Reserve Bank Governor chaired. In 2015, a number of task force meetings that took place, and this task force included stakeholders from the commercial banks, the credit institutions, women in business, SG's office, the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Industry and Trade, the credit unions as well. And the legislation was drafted in 2006, or draft legislation. My understanding of the legislation is that it was drafted using New Zealand law as a base, but in terms of complexity, the PNG legislation was used. In 2016, there was extensive stakeholder discussions with more than 50 bilateral or multilateral stakeholders in Fiji. The draft legislation went through a number of changes. However, in 2017, the Minister for Economy said that one of the things that the draft legislation did not include was the sugar industry. And the reason initially it was not included was because of the number of legislation that need to be changed. So said that it's important that the sugar industries should also be included. So therefore, the stakeholders were then called in. Amendments were made to the draft legislation, and this was then introduced in Parliament. The bill then went to the standing committee. There was a number of submissions that were made, including one by Reserve Bank as well as by the commercial banks. The report on the bill was then presented to Parliament on 12th of September, and it was passed on 15th of September. And I must add that all members of Parliament supported this bill. Why is the Reserve Bank interested in this legislation? You look at this chart, there's a very strong relationship between credit growth and economic growth. So this legislation facilitates or promotes easier access to credit, as well as hopefully lower interest rate or cheaper credit. So when credit grows, economy grows, poverty is reduced, employment is created, there's more investment, government gets more tax revenue, government can then use this tax revenue for its social and economic issues. I just thought to throw this slide in, which is the SME financing gap. This is a study that is done by IFC and World Bank that shows that when you look at SMEs all over the world, while majority of them have got a bank account where they place deposits, a significant number of them do not have access to loans. They estimate that the total SME credit gap in the world is somewhere between 1.3 and 1.6 trillion dollars. A recent study has also been done on Fiji, and it's estimated that the credit gap for SMEs in Fiji is approximately $1 billion. I'm sure as lawyers you'd know that there's a vast difference between secured and unsecured borrowing. And I'm sure Brett would agree with that. If you have security, you are able to borrow at longer terms, your interest is lower, you get a larger loan amount. And if you have security, it doesn't matter whether you're a small business or a big business, you'll be able to get loans. But if you have to borrow unsecured, normally unsecured loans are much shorter term, has much higher interest rate, and the amounts are much, much lower. What are the key features of the Personal Property Securities Act? In my reading of the Personal Property Securities Act, it must enable 5 key activities. 1, it must be able to create loans backed by collateral. 2, it must prioritize claims against collateral. 3, it must publicize these claims. 4, enforcing claims if loan is unpaid. And lastly, it must have a broad scope. So the legislation that we have in Fiji it provides the use of mobile assets as collateral for loans. There's an online registry. There's an enforcement outside courts, and provides certainty of claims and process in case of default. The legislation also removes ambiguity regarding exactly what property has been pledged, to whom the property has been pledged, and the lender's rights to repossess the assets quickly in the event of payment default. What are the key benefits of this legislation? Obviously, the first benefit is increased access to credit. In the region in particular, where land is the key asset, A lot of people do not own land or because land is owned on a communal basis. So this will unlock the potential to borrow against personal property, and therefore is a powerful tool for MSMEs or people that do not have land holdings. Second is because the loan will be collateralized, it will reduce the cost of credit or the interest rate that people pay. Cost of credit therefore translates into cost of savings to the businesses. We hope that the credit risk is also diversified. Banks or lending institutions currently lend a significant part of their portfolio to secured assets or loans just for mortgages and for mortgage or property or real estate. This now helps them to diversify their loan book. And lastly, to hope to increase market competition. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown that in countries that this legislation has been improved, that has been enacted, there's been increased market competition between the banks as well as amongst the banks as well as the non-bank financial institutions. So lastly, and therefore all this translates into increased access to credit, to mean overall increase in economic activity. What are the other benefits? I've shown this slide in terms of the ease of doing business ranking that the World Bank does. Fiji's ranking in terms of ease of doing business is 101. That's a 2018 rating. Last year our rating was 97, 2016 was 88. In terms of getting credit, our ranking was 79 last year, in 2016, and 157 in 2017. And part of the reason our ranking went down is because of the closure of the credit bureau. On the other hand, you see Papua New Guinea introduced this legislation a few years back. While the overall ranking is much worse than Fiji, in terms of getting credit, the ranking has improved from 109 to 32. So hopefully once this legislation comes in full force, our overall ease of doing business ranking will improve. The ranking has been declining over the last number of years, so hopefully this will arrest the decline. Just move very quickly on an online registry. So the Personal Property Security Act, you do not have to now go to the stamp duty to register companies. The registries are online. The Reserve Bank has agreed to fund and to manage this registry. One of the reasons when we talk to the stakeholders is that in order to give confidence, it would be best that this registry is initially housed at the Reserve Bank. So the Reserve Bank will initially, resource this registry in order to give confidence to the market. So the purpose of the registry is to enable the registration of a security interest by creditors, which in turn is publicly searchable, and to establish priority between secured creditors. The functions of the registry is to register all loans that are given. If there's renewal of loans or extensions of loans that can be given, if there are amendments to the loan agreement that can be searched. So this online registry is available 24/7. So you can be sitting in your home or at any time of the night, you'll be able to search. So if you want to buy a car from your neighbor and want to know that, whether it's already pledged, you can do it online. So this will significantly save time and cost for the banks as well as for individuals, because you really don't have to go from one bank to another or to LTA. And lastly, our last function is discharge. So when a loan is paid, you can discharge it on the system. Impact of the secure transaction reform in our other jurisdiction, I will not go over in detail, but the key findings in all the countries whereby this legislation has been implemented is there's been a substantial increase in the value of loans given to SMEs. Closer to home in Vanuatu, Tonga, and Solomon Islands, one of the first things that we've seen over the last couple of years, there's been a significant increase in loans that has been given to SMEs. There's been significant increase in the searches, so people are looking at it to see whether what they're buying is owned or pledged to somebody else. The feedback from the central banks that we have received is that this has been a substantial efficiency gains in reduced labor and legal cost. And there's also been an increased competition by non-bank financial institutions to offer new products. What are the next steps? So the legislation was passed by Parliament, and as I mentioned earlier, the ADB is helping us with this legislation. So they are funding the procurement of the registry. The tender process has gone out, and they should be able to, they'll be completing this later this month or early next month. Once the software is purchased, then this will be customized to meet Fiji's needs, and that will take 2 to 3 months. Following that, what ADB will do is that they'll conduct training for the financial institutions as well as for the Reserve Bank, because we'll be the registrar. The commencement of the Act, there's a 6 months transition period, and the reason for the 6 months transition period is that all lending institutions that have currently lent under the existing law would be able to move their loans to this online registry. And lastly, we'll be creating public awareness. So in summary, just want to add that this is a tried and tested legislation. The objective is to assist in unlocking finance for economic growth. The benefits are enormous, particularly for SMEs. There's been extensive stakeholder engagement in this legislation over the last 3 years. All members of Parliament have supported this legislation. The RBF is responsible for maintaining the register and will continue to do that as long as we feel that the market needs that confidence. This should be operational in the second half of next year. And finally, that this legislation will help arrest the declining ease of business doing ranking that we have in Fiji. So I'll end there. If there are any questions today, I've hired 2 of my lawyers from the Reserve Bank, and they've especially flown in this morning through by helicopter.